Few images haunt the annals of Roman history quite like the brutal fate of Marcus Tullius Cicero. His severed head and hands, stained dark with blood, were publicly displayed on the rostrum orator platform where he had once stood tall as the greatest defender of the Roman Republic. The crowd that assembled to witness this harrowing spectacle was gripped by a chilling horror. The passionate voice that had once condemned Mark Antony as a tyrant had been extinguished not in a contest of rhetoric, but by the sword. This grotesque act was more than mere execution. It was a calculated ritual of humiliation. Each blow that drove nails into the wooden platform served as a stark reminder of Antony's triumph. While every drop of blood represented Cicero's ultimate defeat, after 2 years of simmering rage, Antony had finally exacted his revenge. Eager for Rome to witness the brutal demise of its embodiment of philosophy and freedom, along with their advocate. How did Rome's most revered intellectual, a man whose eloquence could sway the Senate and inspire the masses, meet such a savage and public end? The story does not hinge on a single act of betrayal, but rather unfolds as a war of words and wills that pushed one of Rome's most formidable men to his breaking point. This narrative reveals a humiliation so profound that it could ultimately only be avenged through bloodshed. Our journey begins in the chaotic aftermath of the Ides of March in 44 BC. Julius Caesar, the proverbial dictator for life, had been brutally assassinated, stabbed 23 times by a group of senators who styled themselves as liberators. They believed that by ending Caesar's life, they had saved the Republic from tyranny, yet their actions merely plunged Rome into a catastrophic power vacuum. In the midst of the ensuing chaos, 2 men ascended to prominence. The first was Marcus Tullius Cicero. Although not among Caesar's assassins, Cicero stood as the intellectual backbone of the Republican cause. He had skillfully navigated the political landscape, climbing the ranks through sheer intellectual prowess rather than noble lineage. To him, Caesar's death represented a fleeting opportunity to restore a republic free from the control of military tyrants. The second was Mark Antony, charismatic and battle-hardened general who had served as Caesar's right-hand man and co-consul. Unlike Cicero, Antony was a man of action, steadfastly viewing the assassins as traitors who had murdered his friend rather than saviors of the Republic. While Cicero garnered respect within the Senate, Antony commanded the unwavering loyalty of Caesar's veterans and the affection of the Roman populace, especially after his impassioned funeral oration for Caesar, turned public sentiment against the conspirators, forcing them to flee from Rome. For a time, a tentative peace lingered in the air. Surprisingly, Antony sought to play the role of a conciliator, even supporting legislation to permanently abolish the office of dictator. It appeared that collaboration between Antony and the Senate, led by Cicero, might be possible. But this fragile détente was merely the calm before the looming storm. Their ideologies were fundamentally at odds. Cicero believed in a republic governed by law and the Senate, whereas Antony, forged in the fires of Caesar's tutelage, championed individual power bolstered by military force. Distrust loomed large over their relationship. Antony viewed Cicero as an arrogant intellectual, disconnected from reality. Conversely, Cicero perceived Antony as a reckless drunkard and a new tyrant eager to step into Caesar's shoes. The tension simmered until eventually one of them would be compelled to act. That fateful move came not with the flash of a sword, but with the force of Cicero's oratory. By the autumn of 44 BC, Cicero had concluded that diplomacy was futile. He became increasingly convinced that Antony was seizing control and misappropriating Caesar's legacy for personal gain. Thus, on September 2nd, he addressed the Senate, unleashing the first of what would become a series of 14 searing speeches known as the Philippics. The very name was a historical jab, conjuring up the orations of the esteemed Athenian orator Demosthenes, who had warned against the tyranny of Philip II of Macedon centuries earlier. By christening his speeches the Philippics, Cicero effectively positioned himself as the champion of liberty and painted Antony as a foreign despot threatening the Republic. In these speeches, Cicero did not merely critique Antony's policies. He launched a brutal character assassination. He portrayed Antony as a debauched, cowardly womanizer and a man of vice. The second Philippic was so scathing that Cicero did not deliver it orally. He opted instead to publish it as a pamphlet. In this uncompromising text, he chronicled Antony's life as a litany of disgrace and corruption. accusing him of overwhelming debts and scandalous behaviors, all to show that he posed a significant threat to the Roman state. In one particularly damning passage, Cicero declared, "What is there in Antonius, save lust, cruelty, insolence, audacity? He is wholly compact of these vices." These speeches circulated rapidly through Rome, igniting public animosity toward Antony. For a man like Antony, whose authority hinged on being perceived as a respected leader, the fallout was devastating. Cicero's eloquence turned the tide of public opinion, successfully portraying Antony as an enemy of the Republic. Seizing this momentum, Cicero aligned himself with a new player on the stage, Caesar's young and ambitious adopted heir, Octavian. He mistakenly assumed he could leverage Octavian to eliminate Antony before discarding him as well. Antony, however, was far more resilient than Cicero had anticipated, and his hatred was deep-seated. Forced out of Rome and branded a public enemy, Antony regrouped in northern provinces, acquiring an army but suffering defeat in battle at Mutina in 43 BC for a brief moment. It seemed that Cicero had triumphed, but he had profoundly underestimated the depths of Antony's resolve and wrath. The political landscape shifted rapidly. Cicero's scheme to utilize Octavian backfired dramatically. After their victory at Mutina, the two consuls overseeing the army were killed. Thrusting the 19-year-old Octavian to sole authority, feeling slighted by the Senate's refusal to confer the honors he felt he deserved, Octavian ordered his army to march on Rome. He seized the treasury and declared himself consul. Then in November of 43 BC, Octavian met with Antony and another of Caesar's generals, Lepidus, on a small island in a river. These three formidable figures, setting aside their rivalries, forged the Second Triumvirate, legal military dictatorship with sweeping powers to enact laws, appoint officials, and chillingly condemn enemies without trial. Their inaugural priority was to settle old scores and replenish the state coffers. To this end, they resurrected one of the Republic's most heinous practices, the prescriptions. Death lists were publicly drawn up and posted in the forum, marking anyone named as an outlaw. Their assets were forfeited, and a bounty was established for their lives. This state-sanctioned slaughter aimed to eliminate all opposition and fund the impending war against Caesar's assassins, Brutus and Cassius. Ancient sources suggest that approximately 300 senators and 2,000 wealthy equestrians were marked for death. Without remorse, the triumvirs betrayed even their closest kin. Lepidus conceded the life of his own brother. Antony agreed to sacrifice his uncle. And Octavian, who once revered Cicero, led the charge against the esteemed orator. Although Octavian initially argued for Cicero's life, Antony was unyielding. The lingering humiliation of the Philippics had never healed, and he insisted Cicero be the first to die. The pursuit of Marcus Tullius Cicero commenced in earnest. Aged 63, Cicero, upon learning of the prescriptions, realized his time had come. Residing at his villa near Tusculum, Cicero attempted to flee. With his brother Quintus also on the list, turning to Rome in search of money, only to be swiftly captured and executed. Cicero trekked southward, hoping to obtain passage on a ship to Macedonia. Yet his resolve wavered amidst uncertainty and despair. He was weary of flight. According to historian Plutarch, he was heard lamenting that he would die in the land he had tirelessly sought to protect. For a brief moment, he boarded a vessel. But turbulent seas caused him to abandon the escape, returning to his coastal villa at Formia, seemingly resigned to his fate. It did not take long for the soldiers to find him. The death squad, led by a centurion named Heroneus and a military tribune named Papilius, whom Cicero had once defended, and a murder trial came for him. Cicero's loyal attendants wished to resist, but he forbade them from fighting. As he heard the soldiers approach, he ordered his litter to be set down. The final moments of his life are documented by several historians, frail and exhausted. Cicero leaned his head out of the litter, stroking his chin, and offered his neck to his executioners. His last words, infused with dignity amidst despair, were, "There is nothing proper about what you are doing, soldier. But try to kill me properly." The grim task reportedly took 3 clumsy strikes to sever the head of the venerable statesman. However, Antony's orders specified a gruesome ritual. Death alone would not suffice. Cicero's body had to endure profound humiliation. Both of his hands, the very hands that had crafted the 14 devastating speeches against Antony, were severed and brought back to Rome, where Antony awaited their arrival in the Forum. When the soldiers presented their ghastly trophies, history records that Antony erupted with joy, rewarding the assassins handsomely. The final act of dreadful vengeance was yet to come. Following Antony's directives, Cicero's head and hands were nailed to the rostra, the very stage where Cicero had once defended the Republic with unparalleled fervor. Now his decapitated head and lifeless hands were displayed as a chilling warning to anyone contemplating dissent. The message was unmistakable. The voice of the Republic had been silenced. The historian Cassius Dio adds a final grotesque detail. Fulvia, Antony's wife, had her own reasons to detest Cicero, having viewed him as an adversary to her late husband. Dio recounts that Fulvia took Cicero's severed head, spat upon it, and pierced it repeatedly with the hairpins that adorned her hair of vicious victory over the man whose greatest asset had been his eloquence. The tale of Cicero and Antony serves as a poignant reminder of how deeply personal vendettas can reshape history. The confrontation between the ultimate statesman and the UHDs and the soldier culminated in a striking display that signaled the death of free speech in Rome. If you find these power struggles as gripping as we do, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for more explorations into ancient history. Additionally, share your thoughts in the comments. Whose side do you align with, Cicero, the bold defender of liberty, or Antony, the vengeful general? In the end, Mark Antony achieved his vengeance, silencing his most formidable critic in the most humiliating manner imaginable by exhibiting Cicero's head and hands on the rostra. He was not merely executing a rival, he was extinguishing an idea and signaling the end of debate and republican ideals, supplanted by ruthless power wielded through violence. In the short term, Antony emerged victorious, and he and the triumvirs subsequently triumphed over Brutus and Cassius a year later, cementing the Republic's tragic fate. Yet history possesses a long memory. Antony's victory was ephemeral. He would eventually face defeat at the hands of Octavian and meet his demise by his own hand. Meanwhile, Cicero's legacy persisted. One can sever a head and nail hands to a post, but the written word remains indomitable. Cicero's speeches and writings endured beyond the fall of the Republic and the very man who orchestrated his execution. They continued to be studied for the next 2 millennia, influencing the founding fathers of the United States and shaping the core of Western political thought. In retrospect, while Antony triumphed in the battle for his survival, Cicero emerged as the ultimate victor in the war of history. Antony may be remembered as a grand general, but he is also perceived as a tragic figure caught on the wrong side of history. Cicero, despite his flaws, is immortalized as a martyr for liberty, a man who understood that while a person's life is fleeting, the memory of one lived nobly endures eternally. His mutilated body became a grotesque symbol of Antony's power, yet his words transformed into an enduring emblem of the Republic he perished endeavoring to protect. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to support our work and never miss an upload. Like this video, drop a comment, and share it with others to show your support and help us grow this historical community.